Hi guys, this is Dr. Scott. Welcome to LA Not So Confidential. I'm here with
Dr. Shiloh. Hello, it's been a long time.
I know,
Holidays.
sorry to make you wait. We got a lot of emails saying that we were making you wait too long, so we apologize. We're really excited today, because we have not only a really special guest, but we have our first guest and interview for LA Not So Confidential. A writer who is going to help us delve even deeper into the Netflix series Mindhunter that we talked about in our last episode. And so we want to introduce Jennifer Haley. Jennifer Haley is an award-winning playwright and television writer whose work delves into ethics and virtual reality and the impact of technology on our human relationships, identity, and desire. Her award-winning play, The Nether, premiered with Center Theatre Group in Los Angeles and has been produced off-Broadway on London's West End, across the U.S. and internationally. Jennifer wrote on season 2 of the Netflix original series Hemlock Grove, which is based on the novel of the same name. Jen is currently a writer, or was a first season writer and co-producer on the acclaimed Netflix series Mindhunter, starring Jonathan Groff and Holt McCallany. Mindhunter is an American crime drama web television series created by Joe Penhall, based on the true crime book Mindhunter Inside the FBI's Elite Serial Crime Unit, written by John E. Douglas and Mark Allshaker. Mindhunter is set in 1977, during a period when the FBI worked towards quantifying the process of criminal profiling and its intersection with criminal psychology. Mindhunter revolves around FBI agents Holden Ford and Bill Tench, along with psychologist Wendy Carr, who interviewed imprisoned serial killers with the intent to understand their peculiar thinking processes and thereby apply this knowledge to solving ongoing cases. So we're really excited to welcome Jen. Jen, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be your first guest.
Oh, cool.
It's very exciting.
It is really exciting.
We kind of alluded at the end of our last episode that we were going to have something exciting coming up, hopefully related to Mindhunter. And we were just really excited to do that episode, to look at it. I sort of came into college and reading John Douglas's books, and it really sparked my interest in criminal justice and then psychology. But we, of course, just gushed about the series because it came out so well, so we're so happy.
And a very different vibe than the book. You know, the characters of Holden and Bill are quite different than John and Robert, who really started it.
Right.
And the book, the tone of the Mindhunter, the book, is quite different than where the TV show ended up. But
so were you directed to be part of that movement of changing the tone, or
no? That was all done by David and Joe.
Okay.
So at what point did you become involved in the project? How did that?
So they developed the show for about 3 years. From what I understand, the origin story is that Charlize Theron bought the rights to the book and then went to David, and who, of course, was excited by the subject matter, and they worked with a couple of writers before they settled on Joe, and then Joe and David developed it together for about 3 years. And Joe was set to write, there were going to be 10 episodes. He was writing 7, and 3 of them they were farming out to as freelance episodes to writers. So this was about 2.5 years ago. Joe had seen my play, The Nether, in London, which has a lot of interrogation scenes. Basically, half the play takes place in an interrogation room, which I think is why he was like, let's talk to this gal about writing one of our episodes.
Right, but let's also be really, The Nether is challenging. It's, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I just read it recently. Please go to Amazon immediately and purchase it.
You can get it on Kindle.
Please get it on Kindle. You need to read it.
You get it directly from Sam French.
Okay, you get it from Sam French. It's challenging and fantastic, and hopefully we're going to be able to get Jen back in a future episode, because I think we could talk for another hour and a half just about that particular subject, but I'm not going to get on that right now.
Right.
Okay.
So, and I think our audience will really
they'll get it.
Yeah, they'll get it. Definitely.
Yeah, well, definitely dark subject matter, and I think that's what got me hired as well. So they hired me to write episode 5 is a freelance episode. And at that point, Joe shared with me the first 3 episodes and a Bible he'd worked up. And then we Skyped a lot, and worked on an outline together for 5. And then I put that episode through a couple of drafts. This was back in 2015. And then kind of waited to see if the series would get made. But I remember at the time, I had written on Hemlock Grove, which was a great way for me to break into television as a playwright, because I learned so much. But it was, it was a teen wolf and vampire and that sort of subject matter, because I don't think I could have come on to Mindhunter without having written on a television program before, because it's, as you can probably tell from watching it, it's very complex, and I was really daunted by the project. But Joe was great to work with, and I just really got into the characters. And I read the book. I read it over a weekend, and,
Sure.
and I was moving. I mean, the book moves, and it's just so fascinating. And then suddenly, at the end of the weekend, I think it was 2 chapters from the end, is when I started feeling sick. I was like, oh, and I had that
sinking in.
feeling. Yes.
So, building on what you just said, so you knock out the book in a weekend. You have the series Bible, and you're assigned the episode. How much license then are you given? I mean, what's your process of merging all this disparate information about what's expected? I mean, you're building dialogue how?
Building dialogue just by trying to imagine what these people would actually. I mean, for Holden and Bill, I had a template because Joe had written these previous episodes. So thinking about the difference in their voices, that was somewhat, and the conflicts between them, that was somewhat established. And I'd never done this before. I wrote episode 5, which is a case based on a true crime, where this brother and brother-in-law. We can do spoilers here, right? We're assuming that people have seen the series.
That was their assignment. They were supposed to go and watch the entire series before listening, so it's your responsibility, folks. But
I actually have an interesting factoid for you, in that the true crime actually involved 2 brothers. And the legal department, because one of the brothers was never charged and actually went to a psychiatric hospital, legally we could not use that exact story.
Oh.
So it was changed to a brother and a brother-in-law. And I was kind of sad to lose that element, because it was 2 brothers and a sister. It was basically a family affair.
That changes a lot. And by the way, again, we were mentioning this before we went on air. Incredible casting, not only of the lead characters, but of that particular scene. That kid, I'm blanking on his name, but he was the lead in the adaptation of Augustin Burroughs' Running with Scissors. And he was...
Was he the guy that played Benjamin?
The younger Meek, the Meek one, the husband.
Yes.
Amazing. Such a great choice for that. And your directors all have been really great in orchestrating wonderful performances out of the actors.
And that episode was episodes 5 and 6 were directed by Tobias Lindholm, who's a wonderful Scandinavian writer-director. Okay. One of his movies was A War, which was really great. And he was a fantastic director and also a great writer.
Well, so I guess piggybacking on just bringing John Douglas's book to life.
Oh, so something you had asked me is about how do you write this based on, because it's this particular crime was a couple of paragraphs in the book, and what you can find online is basically one old brief article. And this was the case, like for Monty Rissel, for example, there was not a lot of background information. But for this case in particular, there were a couple of articles and 2 paragraphs in the book. So then it became a matter of, as a dramatist, how do you find the different voices for these characters? But obviously one character was kind of the weakling of the bunch, and the other character was the more aggressive brother.
Well, which is totally a concept in the work that we do when you're working with dual pairs of murder. I mean, that has happened throughout serial killer history, where there's a dominant personality that really takes the more passive or secondary individual in that relationship, takes them in directions that they never would have gone without that push, because they are so passive and they are so pliable.
Right.
So that I thought that was really That was really painted well in that
That's
episode.
interesting to me because I did not know that that's actually a pattern.
Right.
I mean, some of the things we studied involved a couple of guys working together, but I didn't realize that that was an ongoing thing. I found the case really fascinating to delve into, and then how the presentation of the crime and the victim, and how the victim was victimized, and the question of, well, would the you in the episode you watch them try to figure out, or it's that one, or episode 6, you watch them try to figure out if the killer raped her before killing her, then it's very odd that he would also mutilate her,
Right.
because the act of rape itself is the show of power and the dominance over the victim.
Exactly.
So
what does this all mean, and how does it fit with
figuring out it's
these
two
suspects?
of them, yes.
Sure. And then with the sister involved, or sister-in-law involved, it's a whole nother dynamic.
Yes.
And she was really good too.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was great.
that actress was wonderful.
Yeah. So remind us, which episodes did you write on?
So I
altogether?
wrote on episode 5. That was my freelance episode I wrote back in 2015.
Okay.
And then just kind of waited and hoped that the series would go into production. Because, I mean, I got paid to write that episode, but I was not going to be able to share that episode with anyone. Everything was kept, quite secret until production. And I wouldn't get credit on that episode if that didn't air. And David had a couple of other big projects lined up. So it was kind of this waiting game to see whether and when
Wow.
the show was
Yeah.
going to come up.
If and when.
If and when, and then very suddenly both of those projects fell through, one after the other, and suddenly Mindhunter came into first position, and they were going into production in Pittsburgh, and they brought me on they filmed out of order, so they filmed episodes 1, 2, and then they moved on to episodes 7, 8, 9, and 10,
Oh.
and then went back to 3, 4, 5, and 6. And
Interesting.
partly that's David's wanting the episodes to reflect the seasons that they were actually
Gotcha.
being filmed in.
That reflects back to what we said in the episode. We talked about how, and I'm married to a production designer, and so he has taught me over the years, things that I would never have noticed, but there's real grimy beauty in the way that this is filmed. I mean, it looks like the period. There's almost this sort of amber yellow cigarette smoke haze over so many of the shots in the way it's lit. And I think, and he, even as we're watching it, he goes, I could tell they picked Pittsburgh because it's one of the few towns that's left that has so many buildings and exteriors that are from that time period that you can still work with. And it's a great job.
Yes, and it kind of amazed me because on Hemlock Grove I went to set for about 5 days. I was a junior writer, and here I was actually writing so much, so I jumped in and started doing rewrites for 7, 8, 9, and 10, because those, as 1 and 2 were being filmed, those were coming up. And what amazed me, I finally kind of absorbed what it is to do a period piece, because every time they did an exterior, they would have to round up all the modern cars, get them out of there, and bring in all these 70s cars. They had a car wrangler, they had to redo the outside of the buildings, and like I said, this is my second job in television. I hadn't worked much on set, so just to see the kind of, for instance, there was one scene, that scene set in the grocery store. I believe it's in episode 9 or 10.
When they're walking with the cart and just
Holden
throwing.
and Debbie.
Yeah.
So that scene, which is 2 minutes long, the production folks were just crazed
All
in
the
terms
products
of getting
on the
that
shelf.
scene ready. I mean, we're talking about a
That's-
month and a half,
Oh, yeah.
and everyone was talking about how to pull that scene off, because every product on the shelves had to be 70s.
Yeah. Talk to my guy.
He
'Cause
got
that,
it. He understood when he watched it.
He was shaking his head going, that is so fucking hard. Because every label, I mean, if you are going to use something that actually exists, you have to go clear it through legal. And then you've got to look and see what
Yes.
the logo was 35 years ago. And in fact, I think some Uber nerd already posted online.
No. Okay. So I'm going to give our friend Dee Dee at your work a shout out right now.
Yes.
Her son saw a jar of something and was like, nope.
Because they're all East Coast. They're all East Coast. Was it coffee or something? It was something.
Some like spaghetti sauce or something.
Yes.
I'm like, I don't even know what that is, Dee Dee. I'm from Southern California.
Dee Dee's son caught it. That was it, I thought.
We love you, Dee Dee.
But yeah, that's a lot of work. In fact, like the stores, malls, like they're please don't write a store or mall. They always say,
Right?
but it's great because it's stimuli, and they're such good actors. They also use their environment really well in that scene.
Well, and so much is set in these prisons and interrogation rooms, these long talking scenes that, I think you do need to spice it up every once in a while.
Sure.
Something that's moving and out in the world.
So when did you find out that it actually did get picked up?
So in the spring of 2016 is when that all happened very quickly. It got picked up and they started production in May. And I was out there by July working on the episodes in Pittsburgh. So it was very fast. It was very fast. And it was exciting. I was so glad that the series was actually moving forward, because I was even writing episode 5 in that freelance episode. I could already tell what an amazing show this was going to be. So it was thrilling to have it actually go through and happen.
Yeah.
So in your rewrites or your bump ups of the then episodes that came later, did you get to, because I know Shiloh has some questions about Anna Torv's character. I mean, we're both fascinated with that because they changed it from the book a good bit. I think she was
a psychiatric nurse.
She was a psychiatric nurse, and they made her a psychologist in the series. And I thought she captured a lot of stuff beautifully. I mean,
she really did.
Yeah.
She really gave that character depth, because both the male characters were very much there, but I feel like Wendy's character was kind of a character that was we were still talking a lot about and developing, and I think she really she just dropped in and kind of also helped figure out who that character is.
Yeah, because it could have very easily just been this dry academic kind of background character that's guiding them and what they're doing.
Yes.
Much deeper than
And it's so timely now. I mean, here we are in late November of 2017, and there is an underlying vibration of people waking up to what women have experienced for millennia of sexual oppression and sexual assault, and just having to go with the male-dominated choices that are made throughout our existence. And I found that really interesting to see her struggling as a woman, as an intelligent woman, and trying to be respected. And not only that, there's a layer of her trying to be respected as a woman, and then also something that we experience a lot in our work. We work with law enforcement, and wonderful law enforcement that are intelligent and incredibly insightful in their own way, that I really value. But there is a distrust of academia at times.
Yes.
And we talk about it all the time.
Right.
And I think that you guys really captured that beautifully.
And Jo, Ann Burgess is not a lesbian, but the character of Wendy Carr is a lesbian.
Right.
And when we were talking to people in the FBI, definitely in the 70s, that was not something you led on to if you were gay. You did not tell people. And I began to look at Wendy as kind of a voice from the future, because she's an academic and because she's studying issues of gender and psychology, and she's sexuality, that she, in fact, the scene where she's chastising them for the way they interviewed Brudos and uses the shoe and accuses them of basically resorting to this locker room mentality in order to try to bully him to
because their
talk
manhood
to them.
was challenged too.
Yes. So that scene was directly informed by, she's beginning to know what we know now, and it is foreign territory to these two male FBI agents. They do not know what she is talking about.
Right.
And also at this time, Holden's narcissism is starting to develop. I mean, he's a likable character, but he's really getting full of himself now, and it is exemplifying. Here was this sort of beta male who now is, becoming exactly what you don't want.
Right.
And she's having to hold the boundary for, harder and harder. It was a really hard scene when she has to rat on them. But I look at that and I think, I can relate to having to make those kind of decisions at times, because we we're held by a body of ethics and our training and our licensure that inform.
And this was a taxpayer study by this point,
Yeah.
so
Right.
the records would be open, anyone could look at their methodology, and it's not scientific methodology
Right.
to try to figure out how to trigger people psychologically to get them to talk, so.
I think that was a concept that was so subtly done when they were interviewing Brudos and looking at what we call countertransference. There's something in this patient that triggers us, and it's getting under our skin for whatever reason is in our history or our experiences. And that was such a perfect scene where Holt is just getting irritated, or Tench, the character's just getting so irritated with it and being mean. And then later, I thought that's so neat. They kind of did that subtly, and then for her to come back and call him out on it, like you said, and you interviewed him this way. It was not successful for our purposes, and then just because your manhood was challenged by this fetish he has,
And also for
Didn't leave
him
purpose.
at that point to go, well, I got what I want.
right?
It's like that's an interesting character arc, because
It
you
is.
wouldn't have said that 3 episodes ago.
Right.
You would have been a little bit more sensitive
Right.
with the influence of your girlfriend opening you up to the influence of philosophy and gender studies and sociological influences in the environment. And I love that he just kind of
And
took off.
non-missionary sex.
Right.
I know. What a concept.
Right.
What a concept. Yeah, the whole shoe, that scene with the shoe was fantastic, where he is allowing himself to go there and then just completely shuts down. And she had, did you write her comeback line? Because that was genius.
Which
if
was
you
the
did.
comeback line?
When he told her this just isn't you, and she goes, "Yeah, that's kind of the point."
I forget. I might not
It's been a long time ago.
We're going to say it's Jen's line.
Right.
That's what we're gonna do. And it's genius.
For so many reasons, episode 7 is my favorite. So just to recap for listeners, that's when Brudos is introduced, and then the concepts, both I think for Holden and Tench, is their work coming home with them in 2 different ways. So with Debbie, in the sense that she's dressing up for him, and the shoes play a main part. But then for Tench and his wife, in the horrible way that the babysitter and his son find that crime scene photo.
Well, and that was Holt's idea.
Yeah.
That sequence
Wow.
got written in Pittsburgh because Holt came in and he was like, what if my son finds one of the crime scene photos? And then we used that as we had a conversation
was so
about
neat.
Nancy, and I will say my idea was to have them come home and the babysitters actually found it, so that we get that voice of the innocent who has found this item.
Right.
And that whole line of Bill and Nancy that ends up with the emotional thing in his office, where he finally is telling her, this is what I do and this is what I can't,
Right.
why I can't tell you. That all came out from Holt
Wow.
giving us this idea, which I thought was a fantastic. We all agreed it's so dramatic, it's so perfect for the show.
It hits a nail on the head with what so many law enforcement officers deal with in, trying to protect their family from things that they do. Whether
And
it
not-
doesn't
You would
have to
know
be
about
this
that.
extreme. It could be just, I don't want to talk about this, dead body that I saw today, or this terrible car accident, or this kid that got abused, just regular patrol cop stuff, not even elite FBI stuff.
But they don't realize that shuts off the process of continuing evolving intimacy with their partner.
Sure.
That's where, I'm a former law enforcement psychologist. She's a current one, and we would counsel, couples and law, and oh my God, you think it's bad with just a guy when it's a husband and wife that are both law enforcement.
Wow.
That's some hard ass couples therapy. Let me tell you,
Wow.
that is difficult stuff.
My husband and I are both law enforcement. What are you trying to say?
Ooh, this is really awkward, Shiloh.
Back on topic.
You both are highly evolved.
I know.
And your husband scares the crap out of me. Her husband has the most intense cop stare. I've seen him use it on people. I'm like, please don't flay
use it
this
on me.
flesh from my bones with that stare.
I'm wondering just to what extent was John Douglas involved in your
Yeah.
piece of, writing or input, or were you just kind of gathering info
He was not. He was not around. I think once they bought the rights to the book, that was then they
Okay.
went off and,
Interesting.
and,
So
and did the show. Yeah.
is there-
once you turn the rights over, if you're not a writer, then. And I'm not sure if he's had an official response to the show or anything like that.
Really?
I haven't seen anything about it.
I read a snapshot of, a title that said he hated Silence of the Lambs, but he loved Mindhunter.
Oh wait, I take it back. You know what? I think I read that too.
So
Yes.
I didn't read the entire article. But
Yes, I
that
think
was
he
the
felt like
synopsis.
Silence of the Lambs was, it was kind of, it was
Kind of silly and
yeah, it was
glorified.
prurient,
more,
and
yeah.
yes, and Mindhunter was more because I think, John Douglas at the time, he was into they were all into the specifics, the minutia, the categorization of this behavior. So
Well, really quantifying every bit of it, which is incredibly valuable. I mean, there's a phenomenal couples therapist named John Gottman, and he has an entire institute. I mean, he has an entire method for couples therapy, and his lab up in the Pacific Northwest watches close-up videos of couples while they're in a session charting micro expressions, and he has quantified. I mean, this guy apparently says that he can talk to a couple for less than 2 minutes, and he knows whether or not they're going to stay together.
Wow.
Just from because they're picking up micro expressions, because they have laid a foundation for scientific research on quantifying these responses that people have to each other. So I love that.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating, and that this author did this as well back in a time where that would have probably seemed like voodoo
Sure.
to a lot of people.
Sure.
And it's laid the groundwork, I think, for some incredible work. But then we also have this balance between people who do the scientific research and the people who actually put it into clinical work. And that's an art in itself, being able to translate that from the research into the actual practice. That's fascinating to me.
It is. It is. What about Mindhunter do you think you were drawn to, as far as how did it match other genres of projects that you get involved in? You talked a little bit about, obviously, them seeing your play and the interrogation part of it, but what do you like to read or watch that kind of pulled you towards this?
The interesting thing is that I was not native. Don't necessarily have a native interest in either serial killers or true crime, but when I was first working with Joe, he actually sent me In Cold Blood, and I realized I had read excerpts of that, but I had never read the whole thing. And when I read the whole thing, that's something that made me really excited to write about true crime. Okay. I've always felt very careful as a writer about writing about true episodes or real people. I would never want to write a biopic because I feel like how can you actually capture someone, a real person, in a piece of art? I think that's really elusive, and you can run into territory where you don't do them service. But because this material, because like for this particular crime, it was working from an article, then you can build it out. And so that's, and like I said, there's something about the fact that it is based in truth, and something about reading In Cold Blood, the way Truman Capote got to know these killers, and the way that the kind of evil was actually very mundane.
Banality of crime, I think,
Yes.
is the banality of it. Yeah.
Yes, and the fact that this was going to be a procedural, but that it was going to be so different from your CSI type procedurals.
Right.
Which, when I wrote The Nether, I did not start writing about crime. I started with the prompt of write what you hate, and I actually hate CSI type television procedurals, like SVU and all that. I just hate that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was a reaction against that kind of genre.
Right.
And there's something about like pulling it into this much more taking a much broader and deeper look into what motivates crime and what creates ethical situations, creates ethical clashes that it's interesting for us to talk about. So that really rooted me into the show. Like, this study started going around to law enforcement, and somehow Hollywood found out about it. And all of the crime procedurals we watch today, like the seeds of those procedurals, started with this practice. I know something they were talking about in terms of where the series is going is including that element as we watch the agents start to fly out to Los Angeles and consult on shows and movies and kind of become famous for starting this whole
that's so
practice.
neat. I mean, it doesn't surprise me because this was like a 10-year project that they worked on, and I could imagine that it's going to get picked up, somewhere along the way.
Right.
Someone
and
leaks
the book
it.
the study they actually wrote, it's called Sexual Patterns and Homicide, and it came out in the early 80s, I think 1984. I'm not sure what procedurals started around that time or what was directly related to the
what would have been
information
crime
in the
shows
studies,
back then?
but
when was like
I was just thinking that title would make a great punk band. Like that name of that book would be.
Sexual Patterns and Homicide.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a great punk band name?
Maybe. Yeah. Wow, that's really neat. Anything else about the project that kind of surprised you? Either in learning the history of or just in the moment and working on it?
Do you mean in terms of like the content, the psychology, or just the way everything came together?
Any of that,
yeah.
Anything that you learned that, from research or just that came along your way while working on it?
Or that you weren't expecting, like, that was
jarring. One of the things that fascinated me, and one of the most challenging things, was us having to put ourselves into basically having to unlearn the psychology that is a day-to-day language for us. So, for example, in the 1970s, no one was talking about dysfunctional families. All of this, people, you can see it when Bill Tench is reticent about sending their son to a therapist. Like, this is still considered, something's wrong with you if you see a therapist. And so we had to be sure that the terminology was correct. I remember I did look at what is the book called that has all the
DSM?
The DSM. I was trying to find examples of the DSM from that time period so that I could make sure that the terminology Wendy was using, that it was all, that it was appropriate for that time period. I remember us talking about the fact that she would have knowledge of The Mask of Sanity, which was one of the earliest books about this.
Exactly. Seminal work, basically. Yeah.
Right. And also, because you can see the agents discovering in the show how important the influence of the mother is on the son. And what actually occurred to me is how Alfred Hitchcock was kind of ahead of his time with Psycho.
Right.
Because that was, the 50s? I can't remember, it's the late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
When did Psycho come out? I think it was...
Yeah, but
50.
he also has some other works that predate Psycho even. I mean, Rope.
And, but specifically having to do with the mother-son relationship.
True.
The mother-son relationship, how he was tapped into that even before,
sure.
That
the
enmeshment.
FBI. And
Yes.
And blondes.
Yes.
Hitchcock had a real issue with blondes.
Yes. Yes, and women, and I think, and we do explore this too in terms of what's that. There's something broken in the relationship between men and women, and how does that was actually a theme that I was very interested in, that I would talk a lot about this kind of symbiotic. It wasn't just, obviously it's broken when the men are murdering the women, but the broken relationship between the mother and the son, and the abused women being unable to. I mean, this is, I'm sure, where you guys are working from all the time, when there's a break in the parental when there's a break in the upbringing and the
Right.
parental communication and
how that's
and forms of love and yes, how
manifesting
that-
in other relationships now. Sure.
The other thing that really interested me is that they're starting to. They start touching it a little bit in the first season. I think they'll get into this more later. But one of the people that we talked with was a former FBI agent in the behavioral science unit, and who worked a lot with psychopaths. And she really felt like it's a pretty. There's a genetic component, but then it's fueled by, it really is a combination of nature and
Right.
nurture.
Right.
And I think that's interesting too. It's interesting to me that I don't know why we have desire to feel like it should be one or the other, to try to place it squarely one or the other, but they're, like
we like
everything else in the
categories.
world.
We like
I know.
labels.
Well, right, and it's a. I always think of it as a three-dimensional Venn diagram of so many influences coming to bear on an individual. Working in state prison over the years that I did I was on a level 4 maximum security yard with a lot of these guys, and what was staggering was the number of head injuries they had all had.
Sure.
Wow.
90% of them had been either had the crap beaten out of them by fathers or sports injuries. They all had traumatic brain injury.
Wow.
All hitting, this part up here in the prefrontal lobe that is tied to controlling impulsivity and executive function. And so you take that part of the puzzle and how it influences maybe already a genetic predisposition and then a hostile environment or, a neglect environment. You can make one.
perfect storm,
Yeah, it's a
sure.
perfect storm. You can make someone, if we horribly experimented on people, you could take a child and absolutely make them into a psychopath. It's unfortunately, I think it happens.
Without trying.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's one of when I read Sexual Patterns of Homicide, they did what Anne and Robert and John were really trying to do was break down, like what are the what's the IQ of these folks? What was the socioeconomic background? What was the relationship to the mother, to the father? Were they exposed to sexual activity at an early age? And on and on and on the categories went, and they ultimately interviewed, I think, between like 60 and 80 incarcerated killers, and mapped out the data across all of these lines.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting work still kind of happening that mimics that. I think at least what I've been most tuned into in the last 10 years is the work specifically on pedophiles and looking at the high numbers of them that are left-handed and the high numbers of them that have lower than average IQs and the high numbers of them that are actually shorter in stature. These biological markers that we're starting to figure out, okay, this is something that happens in utero before birth.
Wow.
And
I'll have to come talk to you once
yeah.
we get the network again.
but I'm starting to see that, or not starting, but there's this ongoing research in different areas that are just looking at these very simple things that you can just go down and tick, on a list.
A rubric, and we're at a place the zeitgeist supports research of this type.
Sure.
And looking at numbers. I mean, we have like so much data, and I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to do with data if we don't get, well, I won't go into a political discussion, but who knows what we'll be able to do with data in the next decades as we continue to gather it, especially genetic data. I mean, that stuff is moving at a lightning pace that no one would have anticipated.
Right.
That's amazing.
Right.
Well, and in the show, there was this pushback against, the thinking at the time, they just wanted to have it black and white, like these people are evil.
Right.
So there's a whole hurdle that the agents have to get over in terms of, can we get outside of the framework of this being evil and start looking at what's actually causing this behavior?
Well, and coming back again to us liking labels, and let's put this label on this person and put them away because we don't want to think about these horrible things they're doing. But as Scott and I know,
it takes a lot of energy to think in complexity.
True. But we've been working with these individuals for so long that I think it's scary to think of them as just human.
Right.
And not evil, because evil is the easier route to think of.
Right.
Not what is this that, what caused this, or to have any empathy for them or understanding of their situation at least.
Right. And if you have to respect somebody, that there's a spark of humanity in this person that we want to label as evil, then how does that hold up a mirror to yourself? And people don't want to do that.
Well, and that
it's
came
really
out
frightening.
so beautifully in the show with them really being likable characters.
Yeah, Cameron Britton as Ed Kemper was very, you wanted to have dinner
amazing.
with
What
him.
a discovery.
Right?
What a discovery of him
Yes.
in that role.
Yeah.
And then one of the, Adam Zastrow played Jean Devier in the final episode, the guy who had kidnapped the 15-year-old and raped her and suddenly realized, I think I need to kill her so she doesn't tell on me.
Right.
But I thought I loved that interrogation scene because I thought he did this wonderful, you almost felt sorry for him because he was just walking into the trap, and because he was so, he was definitely in the disorganized killer,
Sure.
lower intelligence
Sure.
and
Naive
impulse
and-
problems and naive and
And they set it up perfectly where he walked into it.
Right.
But you're right. Yeah. It was just so well done. So I want to ask about Wendy and the cat. Is there a metaphor there? What is going on?
Shiloh and I were texting as we were catching up on episodes, and that was one of the things that I texted her is like, I'm fascinated by this cat. I don't know if it's just artistic license in the structure, but
Is it nothing?
It really
Is it something?
It makes me want to connect with that character even more. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it.
the cat. I was not there for the cat. The cat was. I was there for about 3 months, and we were talking a lot about should we show Wendy in her apartment. We moved her to Quantico. How do we get to see the guys in their apartments, and we're tired of just seeing Wendy in the office. So how do we see her? What's she doing in her apartment? And at one point I wrote a scene where she's talking to her girlfriend and asking after their cat. And I think there was something attractive about this idea of the cat. And then when I watched the series, when it came out a year after I was done working on it, they had that wonderful sequence where she goes down and she's feeding the cat. And then in the end, she finds the ants. So I wasn't there for those discussions in terms of what that was about. But to me, it had something to do with her trying to save something or save someone or save, you think of a cat and it's this innocent creature and it needs help, and there's something about her trying to draw that out of the darkness and feed it, and then the creepiness of it kind of just disappearing and not being able to grasp it. I think all of the main characters, they go down this, they're so excited in the beginning of this project, as we all get excited, I think, at the beginning of projects or the beginning of relationships or the beginnings of things and then as you get into it, no matter what, you confront complexity and you confront questions that you cannot answer. And towards the end of the season, I think, is when all of the characters are hitting that moment where they're realizing this is not going to be easy, and we're not going to collect easy answers.
Yeah.
It was such a great contrast to her apartment in Quantico, because I'm making assumptions about her character, about Wendy's choices, but she's in this sort of mod apartment that has like the earth tone swoops of color across, which is totally wonderful for that time, but she doesn't do anything to personalize it. It's like it stays this sterile blank space, and she's the long pauses of her standing in the kitchen, and then that take her down into the laundry room, that then connect her with something that's living and warm, which is very different from even the cold office in the basement at Quantico. And however they constructed that contrast, it really worked for me. And
it's such an example of how, and just visual storytelling, because there was no dialogue, and very, I think they were able to film it very simply, and just the scenes were quite short, and yet they said so much.
Yeah, and maybe it's I mean, I don't know. I'm just going to assume.
Do you have any theories?
Well, I mean, I want to build on what you were saying, is that, she doesn't really make contact. She's reaching out. She's trying to build a relationship with this feral animal or this lost animal, and then it's gone, and there is decomposition and rot and the ants. I'm surprised it wasn't maggots. Maybe that would have been too much. But it's shocking to her. And isn't that a metaphor for what they're doing?
Yep.
You're creating relationships with Kemper and Boutros, and we're respecting their humanity, but ultimately, like, there's something incredibly dark and dangerous, as we see in the final episode. Really dangerous.
Right.
So I don't know if that's what they intended, but that's how it worked for me.
Yeah, I like that.
See, we were really hoping you'd be involved in the second season so we could convince you to do a musical episode.
Oh, Jonathan Groff, that voice. Oh, that voice.
Come on, everyone else is doing musical episodes.
You could probably convince me. I don't think you could convince David to do a musical episode.
The other thread that is just kind of obvious that we haven't talked about yet is the BTK thread that's throughout it.
That was added after I left as well.
Okay, I think we're just really
I
excited.
didn't even pick up on it. Shiloh was like, "Don't you know who that is? It's BTK." I'm like, "What?"
I wouldn't even known who that was if I hadn't worked on the series.
Okay.
Like I said, I didn't know much about serial killers. I found
Right.
so much. I mean, I found out more than I even wanted to know. But
I'm sure.
It's fascinating because, Dexter, the first few seasons I thought was wonderful, because whether it's realistic or not, it's this idea of, his father instilled in him a moral code that he doesn't feel, but he will abide by the rules. And it kind of went off the rails in the last few seasons, but I thought it was really interesting. But even with that show and Criminal Minds and SVU, there's this idea that this is like this huge phenomenon. It's like, oh my God, don't go to Miami, because there's a serial killer on every corner because
Right.
that Dexter is hunting down. Like, that's the most dangerous vacation spot in the country. When the reality is that the percentage of those kind of crimes is low.
Oh,
even though
sure.
there's a lot that we don't know, especially with women, because women tend to go, we don't have a lot of data on female serial
Right.
killers.
Well, even just if you look at numbers of psychopaths, they're 1% of the population.
Right.
And not every psychopath is a serial killer. So.
But what does it say about, I would love your perspective. What do you think it says about us as an audience that we, like, this stuff is selling? Like, this show is really well done. It's popular. It's getting great reviews. And there are other shows. You don't like the procedurals, which I completely can understand. But what do you think that means about us?
I think actually procedurals work because they do always catch the bad guy at the
Resolution.
end. They give you resolution.
Right? Okay.
They give you resolution. And in terms of crime, I think it does have something to do with, like, looking at something that is alien to you, that feels alien, and trying to understand, like, what that mindset is, what mindset you'd have to be in to actually do something like that. And I think, that's what I love about storytelling, because it gives you a place to kind of be curious about violence and death without actually hurting someone or being hurt.
Right. So if you were going to go Jungian, it would be sort of the Jungian concept of the shadow self. That this is the way we play that out. This is the way we use our entertainment as a way of either acknowledging or somewhat feeding the shadow self, instead of pressing it down into everything has to be Main Street Disneyland.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So after reading John Douglas's book and then learning,
We can't watch Leave It to Beaver like
No.
24/7, right?
Oh,
We'd all go crazy.
so after reading his
pressure.
book and then, like you said, learning more about serial killers than you probably wanted to, did you find that there was anything that you had to do kind of for your own self-care to, I don't know, the metaphor of like feeling like I had to take a shower to like wash this off of me, or how have you?
I was so busy that I really got thrown in the deep end on this. No, I was just fighting to get pages in on time. That was really my my primary.
Right.
The storytelling itself was the fun part. The schedule and the pace of it and the expectations. Mm-hmm. Those were my real gargoyles that I was wrestling.
Okay.
Good. I'm glad to hear that because I do know that when people, there is talking about I'm going to misquote, but staring so long into the void that the void begins to stare back, and that can, in certain aspects of this work, creating that kind of stuff. I have to say, like, I'm a big horror freak. I'm a big, I love paranormal sort of explorations. I love true crime. But I don't like the show Criminal Minds. There's something about it that really, it's not even that it makes me uncomfortable. It's just like, there is no hope. There's no resolution. It's constant sense of hopelessness. Hey, it's a successful show, so there's really an audience out there for it. But I wonder about the writers on that show. It's like, okay, we got to find another way to,
Well, Mindhunter has a lot of humor in it.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I think it was so fun to work with those characters. It was really, every once in a while I would kind of, similar to when I was first reading the book Mindhunter, what happened at the end of that weekend. Like every once in a while that would wash over me. But I think as humans we have an incredible grasp on the difference between reality and non-reality. I mean, you have people complaining about how violent the video games are that are out. But if if those barriers weren't pretty firmly in place, why don't we have a ton of pedestrians getting mowed down by teenagers who've been playing Grand Theft Auto? We just don't. There's no proven correlation between. I think there's correlation between addictive video gaming and addictive behaviors and fallout in families and emotional things because of that. But there's no data to connect gaming with
real
now I'm going to go kill someone in the real world. Yes. So,
although I will say, and this will be an upcoming episode that I
the recent story of the girl.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're actually going to be doing an episode on a condition called folie à deux, which is a shared delusion. And if you've ever seen them,
two people.
Yeah, between two people. But if you I'm desperately sending out the vibes to the universe that Melanie Linsky will let me interview her. If you ever saw the Peter Jackson movie Heavenly Creatures,
I was just thinking Heavenly Creatures.
Yeah, it's
two teenagers,
and that's built on a true story. Those women are still alive, and it is, there is once again another example of a dominant and a passive personality. But
do you think that'd be the same with the Slender Man?
Slender Man. It's another example. Yeah, that's exactly how that happened. But like you said, there is no correlation. It didn't cause it. It certainly helped it along. Getting on creepypasta, those kids should never have been allowed on that website unmonitored for that long. But there was already pathology in place that then was fertilized and allowed to blossom.
Because there are, however, many other kids that access that too and didn't
just
kill
like
anybody.
And still going like, okay, I'm going to watch My Pretty Pony now for a while instead.
It's My Little Pony.
Yeah. I thought it was My Pretty Pony. I got it wrong. What are the bronies? I thought the bronies were all about My Pretty. Oh, it's
no,
My
Little Pony. Yeah.
I apologize to the bronies. I respect you.
Well, and so just kind of wrapping up, any other takeaways for you from just working on this project and.
How do you think it affected you as a writer?
I learned so much as a writer. I feel like I got a master class. I mean, working with David, he's quite brilliant, and he thinks on all kinds of levels that, I don't know, he thinks in this kind of like multi-dimensional space, which is challenging because he can have long conversations and out of these long conversations where you can't stop listening for a second or you'll fall off the train of thought. In there are the notes you need to apply to the episode or the scenes or the characters. But applying those notes just gave the world such a great depth of feeling and depth of perception, and his demands for like specificity in the dialogue were sometimes felt extreme, but then it comes out, the precision at which it comes out is...
He knows what he's doing.
You can see it. You can see
Wow,
it.
what a great learning experience.
It really was. And the other thing I really appreciated about the show is that, for example, in Hemlock Grove, I brought in, when I was first working on it, I brought in a scene that was 6 pages long. And the showrunner, Chick, he was like, this is lovely. This is a great scene. It needs to be about 2 pages.
It's
3 at
beautiful.
the most. 2 or 3 minute scenes is for the, on most TV shows, is the max. And this one was the opposite. There were some interrogation scenes at first that had time cuts in them, and David would say, let's take out the time cuts. I want to see how we get from A to B.
And explain what a time cut is for the audience.
So we're sitting in the interrogation room with the incarcerated serial killer, and after about 3 to 5 minutes, we do a time cut and come back, and now there's a sandwich in front of one of them. And so we've jumped ahead in the conversation. And I think there still is some of that, but that was going on with several of the scenes, and it was like, let's take out the time cut and let's go from A to B, which is the playwright's playground anyways, to, how long can you get these characters, how long can you make these characters talk, and where do the turns come organically in the conversation? And so to be able to do that in a TV show, and then the rare times when I was able to take a break from writing and get to set, the way he filmed those scenes was to film, if he had a 10-minute scene, he would film that 10-minute scene straight through, over and over and over again. Change the cameras and do it over and over and over again. I know the scene with Richard Speck. Mm-hmm. They worked on that. That was a 2-day scene. They shot that over 24 hours, and they just did that scene straight through over and over again.
That's harrowing.
Which for me is like a theater exercise.
Right. Including throwing the bird into the fan. Many birds.
I think there was yes, I think
many birds died in those 2 days. I'm just kidding.
Acme Pets. I need another gross of canaries, please.
But there was something that really warmed my heart as a theater maker to see that kind of attention and longevity applied to scenes in a TV show.
Mm-hmm. So Jen, tell us what's next for you. What are you working on?
I'm working on a play. I've been trying to keep all my plays alive. I'm turning an older play about suburban teenagers addicted to an online horror video game. Turning that to a screenplay.
Wow. That sounds... And we've got sirens in the background to
perfect.
accompany us. This is awesome.
Hey, it's Los Angeles.
The crime gods are smiling on us.
We'll hear the
tonight.
helicopter in a second.
Yeah.
And then working on a TV idea for the Nether.
Oh, neat.
That's very exciting. Well, once again, I encourage everyone to go to Samuel French website or Amazon and download The Nether. It's a really wonderful play. It reads very quickly, and it reads quickly, but I'm going to have to go back and read it several times because it's intense. And if you like our podcast, I think you're going to like that play.
So too.
I really appreciate you taking the time to come speak with us. Thank you so much.
This was great.
And
fun.
I hope
it's fun to talk about what we do and not just always just do it.
Exactly. Even to revisit it all these years later.
Yes. It was so great for me to have the show actually come out a year after I worked on it.
Can't even
waiting
imagine.
with bated breath.
Great for us to watch it and then for you to create pieces of it and see it.
We're going to drag you back kicking and screaming after your next project because I know it's probably going to be related to something we do.
Yes.
So thanks again for coming in.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you.
You guys, thanks for tuning in again, and thanks for giving us a little bit of break over the holidays. We're going to catch up, and we will see you next time on LA
Not So
Confidential. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.